Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagenau, and welcome back to another fun-filled, action-packed episode of Iowa's premier conservative podcast. I'm back here in studio with everyone's favorite John Hendrickson and ITR Foundation President Chris Ingstad. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
John, your thank you was just as spirited as everything else we talked about this morning. I feel like you really don't want to be here.
No, I want to be here.
Oh, okay,
I'm excited.
Good. All right. Well, yesterday all the talk in the office was that it's fishing season. Is there some you need to be out and your mind other places or?
Well, my mind is drifting.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well, very good.
We had important business to conduct yesterday, and
yes,
trying to figure out the best rod and reel to get. So.
I take all tax policy advice and fishing advice from John without question.
Yeah.
I just take what he says and follow it.
And flowing from those two, just generally what it means to be a great American is usually I trust John to be an arbiter of all
right.
of that. Okay, great.
Yep.
Great. So I missed the pre-production meeting this morning, gentlemen. I was up at the Capitol. We had a subcommittee on a new property tax bill that was in the Senate. Did I miss anything?
No.
Wow, you guys are great.
No,
This is we're just flowing. We're rolling today.
When left to our own devices, Chris, we'll just sit at our desks and work.
Not me. I got to go do something.
See
somewhere.
what happens when you're not here?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. So
maybe you could fill us in about what's going on at the Capitol then. That seems important for a tax podcast.
I thought we could at least do 30 or 40 seconds of something fun before we launch straight into the nuances of property taxes. But we'll go straight into it, guys, because that's where we're at today. So we talked last time. The House has amended their property tax bill, which is now House File 718, which is actually on the House debate calendar for Wednesday of this week. We're recording on Tuesday. The Senate, and some of this is really inside the building mechanics, re-released an updated version of their bill. And according to Chairman Dawson, is largely to do with making sure that the two bills were germane and not having to amend it a lot on the floor and so on and so forth. But anyway, so the Senate now has Senate Study Bill 1218, and there are new parts to these two bills, some changes. The notable change, several in the House bill, actually. One is it increases the amount of the buy down of the school funding formula. It also has some levy rate readjustment language in it, I believe. And then it has direct notification. And we're going to get to that. The Senate bill has a lot of the ideas that they had contemplated before, in terms of a more robust levy recalculation. A couple other things that we have talked about on this podcast that Senator Dawson has included would also be a levy consolidation. We've done that before. And there's some other mechanical pieces inside that would be a substantial tax savings. But Senator Dawson also included direct notification in his bill today as well. So direct notification is
Chris, just to clarify, among those two bills, direct notification is now a policy piece or feature that's got some overlap. Both bills are grabbing that. Are there other features or items or aspects that have some overlap, or is that kind of the main one?
I think that's the main one right now. I think there's some shared interest in some of the pieces that each side have,
but as of yet, okay.
The direction that each are coming at it from, that would be, and they're not identical proposals on direct notification. So what is direct notification? Now, we have talked organizationally a lot in the past about truth in taxation. Now, as I understand it, and sometimes we are a little loose with some of these terms, but direct notification is a component of what we have talked about in the past with truth in taxation. The levy recalculation sort of being the other part of that, right, John?
That's correct.
You've written the most on this, and so I'm gonna come around to you here. But so this idea of direct notification, which is kind of how we talk about it, but what is that, and what are we trying to do with that?
So you're absolutely right. Direct notification is part of what we'd call truth in taxation, and sometimes it's seen as truth in taxation, but it's just one part of it. And what it deals with is basically it's a very aggressive transparency measure. And so what direct notification means, and we wrote about that in our property tax reform toolkit, but basically if each taxpayer within that locality, whether it's a city, the county, school district, would be sent a notice in the mail that would not only have the time, date, and location of the public budget hearing, but it also have other information such as how much a potential increase would impact your tax bill. And so a taxpayer would know that if the county, city, school district is going to raise rates, this is how my personal bill will be impacted by that potential increase.
And this might even be the more important part, John. Even if they are going to cut their rates, but applied against a higher assessment or valuation, taxable valuation, that bill can actually go up. And that's the part we're trying to get to is
Yes.
put aside all the talk about your taxable value, put aside all the talk about the rates. What is this new budget going to mean to me and my tax bill? And that's what this gets at, right?
Yeah, and that's what this is all about, is that basically it's a simple notice that taxpayers can understand because it demonstrates this is how my bill will be impacted.
I think that's important. One of the criticisms, or maybe not criticisms, but we need another notice. Is that really the solution here? Because folks across the state just got their assessment notice, right? And everybody's mad about that. And you'll get your actual property tax bill in the mail, and that usually is a source of frustration for folks. But and there is useful information on both of those. But where I think this is substantially different, if you get that assessment notice in the mail, you're mad, or a lot of folks are. But I don't think anybody can say, well, that I just went up 25% on my assessment, so I'm going to pay more. But nobody knows what that more is.
That's right.
They just think it's more, and they're probably right. You get the actual bill in the mail. Well, that's frustrating because now I'm actually getting, this is what I have to pay. But what this notice does is gives you a specific piece of information at the time that you can do something about it. Right now, there's nothing you can do about your assessment notice. No. You could appeal it, might work, probably not, whatever. And you could contact your legislator and ask them to do something about it, but you can't. There's not a decision point.
Well, and by the time you get the actual property tax bill in the fall, that's already done.
Right.
They can't go back and redo their budget then.
So, John, like you said, give them that notice, not just when that public budget hearing is, but what that impacts them personally. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows can quote you what their assessment went up. Mine went up 22%, 28%, whatever. Wouldn't it be great if everybody was instead talking about, oh my gosh, my property tax bill went up 7% or 5% or whatever, and they could put a dollar amount on it and then know where to go and who to talk to that could actually make a difference in that.
And in fairness to local governments, well, sometimes a top line budget number might look big. Sometimes an assessment might look big. Once it goes all the way through the budget process, that impact on an individual's tax bill may not be all that big. Wouldn't it be nice for that to be clear too, right? Give them all the facts. So
the states that do this right, and I would say there's two states that are doing direct notification correctly, and that's Utah and Kansas. Kansas is just new at this, but they've had some good success. But Utah, we have decades of evidence where direct notification has empowered taxpayers. It makes the property tax system not only more transparent, but easier to understand. And it also forces local governments to be more accountable by justifying why they want more spending. And so it's just a tool that will empower Iowa taxpayers if the legislature decides to do this in a final bill. And I think it's there's always pushback by local governments saying, well, this is just going to be another expense because we're going to have to send these notices out. Well, when we've talked to people in both Utah and Kansas, the cost of doing this is very minimal. And so this is not a.
I wish they
burdensome.
were so vigilant on other expenses that creep up, as opposed to a single mailing that you know, to their bosses that tells them what they're going to owe. But
I've heard that as well. I've noticed less resistance to this idea this year from even cities and counties than I have in the past. And maybe it's a lobbying tactic where if we sort of agree with the notification, maybe we can get them to, back off of the other pieces of this bill we don't want. And that goes back into the legislative sausage making. But they seem to be largely more accepting of this idea of a direct notification than they have in the past. So that's progress. That's a good thing.
And one thing about direct notification, the devil's in the details, because you could have something that's very weak that just says, okay, here's a notice that has the date, time, location, the budget hearing, and nothing else. Well, that won't be very effective. And thankfully, I think both the House and Senate provisions are a lot stronger than that for the requirements. So again, it's the key is what will actually be included by law in the notice.
And this is one where if you really want to get into the nuance of writing laws, because I've worked with this in the past, it's really hard to write a bill, which is all words, right? When you type up a proposed bill, and tell it what you want a form in the mail to look like, because that's a picture. You don't put a picture of the form in the Iowa Code.
Yeah.
You can say I want this number and this number and this number, but you want this number to be bigger than that one, and you want this number to be in red and this one to that's tough. Mm-hmm. And so then when you go to write the bill, trying to be prescriptive about all that, it ends up with a really long, complicated thing. And I know, John, it's one of the reasons I wanted you to talk about it, because you have spent the time reading through those bills and trying to figure out what they all look like. And so that's good. I think they're both going to be, if we can get this direct notification piece done, it'll be a really good step in the right direction. And
sometimes it happens organically, Chris.
Right.
I mean, we've seen recently in Warren County, I believe, at one of their budget hearings, folks showed up and really told them what they didn't like. It happened in Mills County where the deputies couldn't even get into the meeting room. It was so jam packed. People will show up, but you've got to let folks know about it, right? I mean, again, they don't have a problem providing all the details about what I'll owe when it comes time for us to cut the check. Why not provide those same details before you actually pass the budget that's going to lock us into those expenses?
And I suspect that somewhere, as evidence of this, we have someone listening to the podcast like, what's a public budget hearing? I didn't even know this thing existed. Well, that's by design in some counties. If all you do is put the notice of this in your small town paper at the bottom underneath the bankruptcy notices. But I'm serious. Yeah. I mean, if that's the only way that you would know about it, you're not putting it on any kind of social media. You're not putting it on your website. You're not mailing it out. No one knows this thing even occurs, and you end up with one person at it.
Yeah, and another thing too, that one thing that may have to be addressed in Iowa is not so much, I think, at the city or school district level, but certainly at the county level, is the times that these hearings take place. And I think most supervisors have their meetings in the morning, which a lot of people just frankly can't attend, even if they want to, because of work, unless they take a vacation day. But one thing that was interesting in Texas that I've seen, and is they've had some success with people not just showing up to meetings and to voice their concern about property taxes, but also using other means of communication like social media. And so there's examples out of Texas where residents in some localities have, through email or other social media, have voiced their concerns that have prevented spending increases that way as well. So, I mean, direct notification is a way now for Iowans to hold their local governments more accountable as an important tool.
Quick plug. We here at Iowans for Tax Relief have a tool that allow you to contact your local elected officials as well. So go to itrlocal.org if you want to get a quick snapshot and do that in the meantime until we can get
That's right. Yeah.
a more robust system in place. So that's great. Okay. I want to give a quick update on, we've had Victoria in here and we've talked about where things are at with the legislative session. We haven't really checked in on that in a while. And I get asked the question, well, where are they at? What's left to do? How much time's left? I don't know the answer to any of those questions because you never know until it's done. But it seems to me that the two big pieces left in the legislative session are something on property taxes and passing the state budget. How long that takes could be anywhere. Look, if they made those decisions today, they could be out of there early next week. That's not going to happen. If they decide they want to stare back and forth across the rotunda, they can do that for 2 more months if they want to. And I don't think that'll happen either. So hopefully in the next 2 to 3 weeks, as close to on time, they can resolve these two things. On the state budget, and we don't spend a ton of time on this, but we do care organizationally because controlling the size of spending is a good deal for Iowa taxpayers. Right. And so that to hold the line on spending is important. And
because it's not just holding the line this year. I mean, the reality is once we budget, for a new expense or we increase one, we're signing up for that expense almost between, from now until forever. So it's not just
Right.
X dollars this year. That becomes, literally sort of exponential as we go forward, how much spending they're actually signing us up for. And that's why it's important to hold the line, not just the impact it would have in any given singular year.
So that's an outstanding point, is that built-in expenditure, that baseline amount you want to hold the line on. But just to summarize, this is a lot of numbers, and I know that trying to give numbers in a format like this sort of breaks down quick because people get kind of spacing out. But the amount of ongoing revenue that they have available to spend is $9.6 billion. The amount that the governor proposed was $8.5 billion. So over $1 billion under the available spending limit. So if you take that $8.5 billion that the governor proposed, Senate Republicans came out at the same $8.5 billion number. House Republicans were at $8.58. So it really not a huge difference between the two. House Republicans being a little higher, Senate Republicans being a little lower than the governor. To be fair, there have been a couple of pretty big ticket items that have been passed by the legislature since the governor released her budget that were not anticipated by that budget, being the residential rollback fix, which had a substantial fiscal note, which I think was north of $100 million, and 3% school funding when the governor proposed 2.5%. Okay. So they've spent some money already this year. They didn't plan on coming in. And so Senate wants to be a little underneath the governor. House wants to be a little over. As is usually the case, they probably land somewhere in the middle and that'll get resolved. So I don't think that's going to be a significant impediment to being done. I think the biggest driver of the difference is reimbursement rates to nursing homes for what they pay on those. So just a quick update on the budget numbers. The property tax stuff, I don't know. You guys got a guess on what happens on property taxes?
Nope.
No, John.
I don't either.
I get in trouble when I make predictions about the legislature. I think there are opportunities. I think they could. There is common ground, but I also am very leery of passing a small bill because then it's very easy to claim a victory and not revisit the issue. And if they can't do something meaningful and big, I almost wonder if it's better to wait a year and get it right.
Sure
But
is.
yeah, so I'm skeptical of something that consumes a lot of general fund dollars of the taxpayer relief fund, because those are dollars that we would think should be going to income tax relief next year, which we know is going to be on the agenda for next year. So go big or go home. Is that
Sure.
okay? Good. All right. John, you in?
So just so you know, John, on the podcast format, the listener can't see you nodding your head.
Well, they can if they watch the
See,
That's right.
That's
There you
right.
go.
Yeah.
Good cross promotion.
And, and the YouTube's really taken off, guys.
Yeah.
I promised John almost a year ago when we started this project that I was going to make him famous, and I plan on living up to that promise. So, and we're already planning the spinoffs. Right. Frasier gets his own show. Right.
Yeah.
So we're going to have the Hendrickson Fishing Show or the Hendrickson History Hour.
Yeah.
And where it's, we got big plans. It's going to take us probably another decade or two to get there, but it's the ITR Media Group is still in its infancy here. So we're going to get it done. All right. That's all we got for you today, folks. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe, tell your friends. And with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.